As a golf maintenance employee, you may have to use, mix, store, and handle chemicals at your work. These substances can be very beneficial, but if used incorrectly, they can cause permanent damage to your health. It can take as little as a drop of certain chemicals coming in contact with your eyes to cause permanent vision impairment. This is why you need to be very careful when using chemicals such as insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, nematicides, and acids. Chemical protective clothing is developed specifically to protect you from the hazards that these chemicals can pose. Their purpose is to provide a barrier between you and the chemical that you're working with. There are many different types of chemical protective equipment, including safety glasses, face shields, body coverings such as Tyvek suits, gloves, chemical-resistant aprons, rubber boots, and even hard hats. So how do you know what type of protective clothing you should use? The best way to know what to use is to evaluate the situation and the hazards that you'll be exposed to. Make a list of the chemicals that you'll be exposed to, and then check the chemical labels and the safety data sheets, or SDSs, for each of those chemicals. As you may note on the label, there are different requirements for different tasks. For example, if you're mixing and loading a chemical, you'll probably be required to wear a lot more protective equipment than your coworker who is applying the chemical. This is because mixing and loading puts you in contact with the concentrated form of the chemical, while the substances used for application are usually diluted. You should also consider the task at hand and use common sense to determine what PPE should be used. Keep in mind that your facility may require more equipment than what is noted on the chemical label and SDS. Make sure you know and follow your company's requirements as it relates to chemical protective equipment. If the chemical label does not specify the use of any protective equipment, you should at the very least wear a long-sleeve shirt, long pants, socks, shoes, and gloves. Once you have noted what protective clothing the chemical label and SDS require, and what your facility requires, you should evaluate the area that you'll be working in to determine if any additional protection is required. The hazards encountered must be thoroughly assessed before deciding what protective equipment should be used. Consider whether you'll be walking through areas where chemical is applied or whether you'll be applying chemicals above the height of your shoulders. For example, you may need to wear rubber boots for turf applications, and a hard hat if you're going to be spraying pesticides on trees or other tall surfaces. Complete chemical protection calls for a set of equipment including body coverings such as coveralls, pants and a jacket or a Tyvek suit, safety glasses and/or face shields, gloves, and rubber boots. Failure to use one or more of these types of protective equipment may compromise your safety. There are a few additional factors to take into consideration when selecting chemical protective equipment. These include the level of protection provided, the compatibility of the protective equipment, the suitability of the equipment, and the performance when using it. The level of protection provided varies by the equipment and by the exposure. Factors such as thickness of the material and the exposure times need to be taken into consideration when evaluating equipment. A good rule of thumb is the thicker the material, the more protection is usually provided, and the lower the permeation rate. However, the more concentrated a chemical is, the longer you're exposed to it, the higher the permeation degree is. Keep this.